What did you say the SOT was for Micah Parsons, for Steven on Micah Parsons?
Just Steven talking about how the Cowboys feel post Micah Parsons trade.
Yeah, but which number do we need to give her?
20.
20. Okay, I thought you had said 26.
I'm ready.
I just was making sure because I thought he said 26 during the commercial break, so I wanted to make sure that we didn't get our. I just wanted to make sure we didn't get our signals crossed because that was what I thought I heard you say. SOT 20 is the one. Okay, SOT 20 is the one that we're looking for. Just trying to make sure we're on the same page here because Stephen Jones talked about Micah Parsons yesterday on Mad Dog Radio and launched a conversation relative to the trade itself.
We feel really good about it. Obviously, much respect for Micah and how he plays and the caliber of player he is. But we feel good about what we've added, via that trade. And you look at a guy like Quentin Williams and Kenny Clark. They're not only are great players on the field, but they're leaders in the meeting rooms, how they go about their business in the off season. One player is not worth, 4 or 5 good ones.
It was a 26-second soundbite. That's what I heard during the commercial break. Anyway,
active listening is important, folks.
Because we're not doing a bunch of different things during a commercial break. Anyway, let's talk about Micah Parsons and the trade, please.
Raising his voice, so angry.
Steven outlined their methodology, their thought process here relative to the trade, relative to what they wanted to get out of this. And they felt like having multiple players, multiple bites at the apple here versus just one elite player in Micah Parsons was where they wanted this to land. And I think they feel like anyway that they've landed there.
Yeah, I mean, I know we had a graphic that kind of illustrated that exact thing, and we talked about this at length prior to this segment, off the air. When they made the trade, said, look, yes, we respect everything that Micah has done for us, everything that he's brought to the team, the locker room, whatnot. Here's that graphic I was just mentioning. But at the time, we are willing to give up Micah and, you see there, the first-round pick in 27, the highest of the two, to Green Bay, and that second-round pick this season, in exchange for Kenny Clark, and then what ultimately turned into Quentin Williams, Malachi Lawrence, Devin Moore, and LT Overton. So, as you said, Stephen Jones at the end of that quote said, look, the decision was one player is not worth 4 or 5 good ones, especially when you look at the state of the defense last year. Micah Parsons wasn't going to make the Cowboys defense last year not be 32nd in the league. I mean, he is one player, yes, and he could have impacted, right? You put pressure on a quarterback, it makes your secondary look better. Yes, we get that, but Micah Parsons himself wasn't going to be the fix to what they saw last year. They needed more players. Ultimately, that's what they got. Do these players, 3 of which who haven't played in the NFL before, pan out? Time is going to tell.
But that's how the trade will be remembered, is right. How they pan out.
Right.
And when he's diagramming 4 or 5 good players, because he's equating it to Micah, who covered a lot of weaknesses, both on the defensive line and in the secondary based off of his own pass rushing skills.
Sure.
So to some degree, he could make last year's defense look better if he was on it. Because, again, a lot of that defense was predicated upon we're going to have Micah until we no longer had Micah. So there's some planning that goes into that. The only player on that list, and I am a Kenny Clark apologist. I've been so since they got him. I like Kenny. I really love what he did in Green Bay. That being said, Quinnen is the only guy on that roster right now that is a surefire, close to Micah comp. He is the difference maker on that defensive line. Malachi Lawrence is a project. We think he can develop into something. They obviously liked him, but they weren't afraid to trade back down to him because they knew what the value was there. And we can go into the history on 4th-round picks and how they turn out. There's no guarantee that either Moore or Overton turn into anything. So if you're really going to try and look at this, and I know most people want to try and conflate the salary cap issues and all that, there's so much that can happen from a restructured contract that can mitigate a lot of issues elsewhere on the roster.
Yeah, but working around a $47 million contract is not easy.
But based on how his cap hit was heading into this, the Cowboys had more, prior to the Osa Digizua trade, had more money put into. No, they had 3 guys on the defensive line making $20 million at a certain point. Mm-hmm. So they alleviated that by nixing one to the curb, but that was the expense that they were willing to pay on the defensive line. I say all of this to say, if you're going to look at this at the end of the day and say just straight up player for player, what you got out of Micah was 2-3 years of Kenny Clark, Quinnen Williams anchoring the defense, who is older, by the way, than Micah, and 3 projects that can maybe develop into something. Is that a worthwhile trade?
Plus, to your point, relative to Micah's contract, as much as it is 4 years and $186 million and $46.5 million in terms of average salary, the actual cap hit for the first 3 years of the deal before Green Bay has an out clause in the contract after the 2028 season, 19.2, 26.8, and 42.3 million. So that third year is hefty.
Yeah.
It's the 2029 year, though, where it's massive, 73.8 million that year, but they have an out before that they're likely to either use or restructure before, if they feel like it's worth having him for another 3 or 4 years.
The cap is economics black magic. They are there is so much that's on the books for it, but I mean, heck, just look at what Shohei Ohtani's making. Like that is the comp. Like he's making $2 million a year, but he's making almost
$700 million.
Exactly. Yeah. So, however they figure it out, they can work around it. There are avenues that the teams have in place to figure stuff out. Ultimately, what the question boils down to, though, is do you think that this was an even trade? Because my first thought when you brought this up was, hang on, they are not like slewing the defense with guys of, I'll say, Quinnen Williams ilk. If you're gonna, because ultimately this boils down to what the designation is of good player. Mm-hmm. Are we thinking Quinnen or are we thinking Kenny? Right? Because that's the distinction.
Sure, but I think when you look at the NFL, and especially when you look at a defense,
right,
where you're going to be going against offenses across the NFL that bring elite talent to the table and extremely high-level coaching, if you're bad in an area, they're gonna find it.
Right.
You can be really good. Well, that's the thing. They were bad everywhere last year.
Yeah.
But if you're bad anywhere, they're going to find it. So, if you've got one really, really, really good player in Micah Parsons, but there's a way to beat him, because if we run right at him, we feel like we can mitigate anyway his strengths. I don't think he's as bad as a run defender as some people like to cast him as, but that is, if you're going to find a weakness in his game, that's the one. But you can work around that dude if that's all there is. As opposed to if you now have a defense that is more well-rounded, maybe you don't have that elite level talent, because I don't think that Quinnen Williams is as good as Micah Parsons. I think he's, to your point, the closest they've got right now on that defense, but I don't think he's at that level. But you've got Quinnen Williams, you have Kenny Clark, you have now Caleb Downs, you have now, and I know that's not necessarily tethered to the trade, but I'm just talking
that's the math a lot of people are doing.
Defense.
I just that's part of my pushback on this discussion around the trade is a lot of the math people are including are, hey, they got Caleb Downs and the defense looks better. It's like, that's not technically tethered to the Micah draft. Micah could have been on that defense last year, and they might have been just as bad because the scheme was terrible and the players were bad. Both of those things can be true. So they might have actually been in a better position, you know what I mean, to get Caleb Downs, because maybe they didn't win so much toward the tail end of the season. There's so many different ways to
If you had signed Micah
it.
Parsons, though, to a, let's say they got him for 43 instead of 47 like the Packers did, are you at all in a space where you could even consider signing George Pickens right now?
I mean, like they're already trying to fumble?
Or
they would have to like cut bait altogether probably.
Or getting any sort of reinforcement in the interior of that defensive line. Like, they have Kenny Clark and Quinnen Williams because of that trade. I mean, non-linearly, but, like,
sure,
they used some of the draft capital that they got from Micah's trade to get Quinnen. So, I just feel like when you talk about, like, specifically, I don't know, bringing in Caleb, like, I don't think that you can... We've talked about this before. If you have a really good offense and an average defense and you have good players, not great ones on defense, you can still get by. We've seen teams do that.
And there's a difference between having a good defense and a solid defense, which is what the Cowboys need.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think that with the way they're presently built, with the weapons that they have on offense, like you think of it, I don't know, I think of like a Seattle that's like really good on defense. Like they are really good players, are never going to be on the defense side of the ball as long as Jerry's running the team. Like, they got lucky with Micah being there, but I feel like their money and their strength is wrapped up in offense. You're not talking about getting, 6 or 7 all-pro defenders on the field for Dallas. So I think the fact that they have a couple that could pan out.
I'm just going to throw out there real quick in the Pickens part of this discussion, whether or not they have the opportunity. If something goes wrong in this current discussion, then you have all this capital, this available cap space. that you didn't use to keep him around, which is part of the dialogue on that front too.